Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not just a religious figure. He was the most extraordinary human being in the history of mankind. And this is not simply because Muslims believe he was the final prophet, but because his influence can be measured, observed, and still felt from the sands of 7th century Arabia to the digital age of today. Let's explore why Muhammad, peace be upon him, is widely regarded as exceptional, even by people who never followed his religion. 1. From nothing, he built a civilization. He was born in Mecca, a small city in the heart of the desert with no military power, no political support, and no wealth. Yet within 23 years, he transformed a fractured, tribal, and violent society into a united people, bound by ethics, law, compassion, and vision. He was not just a messenger of revelation, he was a living example of how to live it. 2. A leader who walked with his people. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not a distant ruler. He slept on straw mats, mended his own clothes, and lived simply. Yet he also led armies, crafted treaties, governed cities, and resolved disputes. He was spiritual but rational, soft-spoken but courageous, a man of deep reflection and bold action. 3. Teachings that remain alive today. The Quran and the teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him, continue to guide more than 2 billion lives. Concepts such as monotheism, justice, human dignity, equality, and social responsibility are still debated and admired in the halls of philosophy, politics, and law. 4. Loved and witnessed by those closest to him. Unlike any other historical figure, the personal life of Muhammad, peace be upon him, was recorded in exquisite detail. His laughter, his silence, the way he walked, how he grieved, even how he smiled, all lovingly preserved by those who lived with him. He is the only human in recorded history whose life story can be followed fully, from birth to death, by those who admire and love him. 5. Admired by great thinkers around the world. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not just honored by his followers. He was, and still is, admired by historians, philosophers, writers, and leaders who never embraced Islam, some of whom came from lands and traditions that once opposed him. Let's listen to what they had to say. Karen Armstrong, British religious historian. Muhammad was a brilliant genius who created a religion and a state from nothing, in the middle of one of the most backward societies on earth. Michael H. Hart, author of The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history. My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers, but he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular level. George Bernard Shaw, Irish playwright and philosopher. If a man like him were to assume the dictatorship of the modern world, he would solve its problems in a way that would bring the much-needed peace and happiness. Alphonse de Lamartine, French historian. If greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astonishing results are the 3 criteria of human genius, who could dare compare any great man in modern history with Muhammad? Mahatma Gandhi, Indian national leader. It was not the sword that won a place for Islam. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement, the scrupulous regard for pledges. Thomas Carlyle, Scottish philosopher and writer. A silent great soul, one of those who cannot but be earnest. He was to kindle the world's maker had ordered so. Annie Besant, English philosopher and author. It is impossible for anyone who studies the life and character of the great prophet of Arabia to feel anything but reverence. Bosworth Smith, British historian. He was Caesar and Pope in one, but he was Pope without the Pope's pretensions, Caesar without the legions of Caesar. Muhammad Iqbal, Muslim philosopher and poet. He's the only man in history who succeeded in both the spiritual and temporal spheres to the highest degree. Ali ibn Abi Talib, cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet. We saw light in the darkness of the world through his face. When he spoke, hearts were at peace. When he was angry, no injustice remained. Ali, may God be pleased with him, did not speak from afar. He lived beside Muhammad, peace be upon him, and saw him not only as a leader, but as light and love made real. Muhammad, peace be upon him, is not remembered only by those who bowed with him in prayer, but also by those who never uttered the testimony of faith. His influence was never confined to mosques or books, but flowed through history, politics, philosophy, and the moral conscience of humankind. In an era searching for leadership, his name continues to echo. His example remains unmatched, and his footsteps still shine, illuminating the path for those willing to walk it. So perhaps it is no surprise that, in this chaotic and uncertain world, millions still turn toward him and whisper in awe, "How did Muhammad, peace be upon him, lead with such love, without ever killing the conscience?" Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts or feedback about the content, feel free to share them in the comments. See you in next video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.